There's a force within you that works quietly, shaping your life without your awareness. This force holds everything you've rejected, concealed, or refused to acknowledge within yourself. Desires, impulses, thoughts, fears, and traits your ego does not want to accept. Carl Jung referred to this force as a shadow. It does not vanish simply because you choose to overlook it. On the contrary, the more you attempt to suppress it, the stronger it becomes, functioning behind the surface of your consciousness and influencing your reactions, your decisions, and the way you interpret the world. You criticize others, point out their flaws, and become irritated by behaviors you find unacceptable. However, what you often fail to recognize is that this irritation is not truly about the other person. It is about you. It is your shadow demanding acknowledgement. Every fault you identify in someone else can reflect an unrecognized aspect within yourself. And as long as you continue projecting your hidden darkness onto others, you remain trapped in an unconscious pattern that directs your life without your awareness. It is a harsh and unavoidable dynamic. What you refuse to integrate into your conscious awareness eventually begins to influence your direction in life. What you strongly dislike in others often becomes the very thing you express yourself, frequently without noticing it, not because of ill intent and not because of weakness, but because ignoring the shadow is like signing an unseen agreement, the agreement to be directed by what you are unwilling to confront. This message is for those with courage, for individuals who are exhausted from blaming others and are ready to begin the most challenging and freeing process of life, facing their own inner self. Do not expect this journey to be simple. You will need to confront your deepest fears, acknowledge emotions you once labeled as shameful, and accept impulses you prefer to deny. Yet the outcome is not optional. It is transformative and undeniable. Emotional freedom, personal development, genuine maturity. You were not created to live in conflict with yourself. The shadow that currently undermines you, intimidates you, and influences you can and must be integrated. The decision belongs to you. Either you confront what is hidden within your inner world, or you will be overtaken by what you refuse to acknowledge. Today, I will explain how to break this pattern. But understand this in the beginning. Those who move through their own inner darkness do not return unchanged. The shadow is not what most people assume. It is not merely the negative side of your personality. It is not an inner enemy to eliminate, nor a curse to battle. Carl Jung described the shadow as an essential component of the human psyche, a concealed domain where all the parts of your ego, shaped by society, family, and personal expectations, chose to suppress are stored. From childhood, you were taught that some behaviors are acceptable while others are not. You learned to smile when you felt like crying, to remain polite when you wanted to shout, to restrain your anger, your ambition, your fear, your sensuality, and your vulnerability. Everything that did not align with the mask you felt compelled to wear was pushed into the depths of your mind. That hidden space, this collection of rejected aspects of yourself, is what Jung defined as a shadow. But here's a reality few are willing to face. The shadow is not composed only of aggressive impulses or destructive tendencies. It also contains your creative power, your forgotten enthusiasm, your restrained courage, and your lost spontaneity. The shadow holds both your ability to destroy and your potential to transform. Ignoring it means choosing to live a diminished life. Integrating it means accepting the full reality of who you are. When you understand the shadow, you realize that a human being is not made of light alone, but of darkness as well. Denying that darkness is rejecting your own vital energy. The shadow holds the keys to self-knowledge, emotional development, and the formation of real maturity. But these keys can only be gained through the difficult courage to look inward, without masks, without excuses, without self-deception. Without integrating the shadow, the psyche becomes unstable. Repressed energy turns corrosive, feeding symptoms such as anxiety, depression, sudden anger, compulsive behaviors, self-sabotage, and a persistent sense of emptiness. The ignored shadow does not disappear. It simply finds other, often more painful and self-destructive ways to express itself. This is where emotional projection begins. When you fail to recognize your own shadow, your unconscious mind attempts to reveal it by using other people as mirrors. In the next section, we will examine how this mechanism functions in your daily life and how it persistently exposes the aspects you most try to hide from yourself. When you fail to recognize what exists within, the world acts as a mirror, but not a clear one. Instead, It reflects a distorted image, filtered through the unconscious. Carl Jung described this as projection, the process by which the repressed parts of the psyche, your unacknowledged shadow, are projected onto others. You do not see these traits in yourself, so your unconscious places them outward. This is why the behavior of others can irritate you far more than it should, triggering disproportionate, irrational, and often puzzling reactions. Emotional projection is common, yet rarely understood. You may feel anger towards someone for being arrogant, when in reality it reflects your own suppressed need to assert yourself. You may judge another for being selfish, while deep down you habitually suppress your desires and accumulate resentment for never prioritizing yourself. You might feel frustrated with those who freely express their emotions because, perhaps, you were taught early on that showing feelings is a weakness. The other person becomes a stage where your unconscious enacts everything you have avoided confronting within yourself. This is the essence. Projection is not a conscious choice. It is a defense of the psyche. The ego, in order to maintain the self-image it has constructed, pushes out everything that threatens it. Traits or impulses that contradict the character you believe yourself to be are expelled into the external world. As a result, you perceive monsters in others, unaware that you are actually avoiding your own reflections. Consider how many relationships have been damaged because you did not realize that the issue was not the other person, but how they triggered your shadow. How often have you pulled away from someone without being able to explain why, simply because their presence stirred a feeling you could not name? How often have you resented someone who, without realizing it, reflected the very traits you fought hardest to suppress? Projection turns a world into a battlefield, but the true war is within you. It blinds you, restricts you, and blocks your growth. There's only one way to break this cycle. Take responsibility for your emotions. Ask yourself, with complete honesty, what exactly about this person is affecting you so deeply, and why? Be warned, this process is not easy. It demands that you step away from the comfort of playing the victim and confront the challenging work of examining your own soul. And it is here that transformation begins, when you stop running and start listening to what your shadow is trying to communicate. If you have the courage to face this discomfort, you will realize that the pain of projection is actually an invitation from your psyche to something greater. In the next part, we will examine what happens when you refuse this invitation. When you spend your life ignoring your shadow and, without realizing it, become exactly what you most condemn in others. Ignoring the shadow is like trying to control a fire by closing your eyes. You can pretend nothing is happening. You can convince yourself the problem isn't yours. You can even invent reasons to justify your blindness. But the fire continues to burn, and the more you refuse to acknowledge it, the more it takes over who you are. When you project your suppressed traits onto the outside world, you disconnect from your inner reality. You begin fighting imaginary battles, seeing enemies where there are only reflections, and confronting in others what you secretly fear to recognize in yourself. What you fail to understand or refuse to accept is that the very things you despise externally are quietly shaping who you are becoming internally. Carl Jung emphasized this clearly. Everything we avoid in our conscious awareness shows up in our lives as fate. If you do not confront repressed anger, it turns into resentment and passive aggression. If you deny envy, it becomes silent bitterness. If you suppress ambition, it decays into frustration and self-pity. Gradually, you stop being the person you believe yourself to be and become exactly what you once opposed. This is how hypocritical moralists arise, publicly condemning the very impulses they secretly indulge. This is how compulsive altruists are created. Those who over-sacrifice themselves while harboring hidden resentment toward those who do not reciprocate. This is how even good men and women can become oppressors, at home, at work, and in their relationships, crushed under the weight of what they never had the courage to integrate. You can spend your life running, justifying, and blaming others. Yet the truth is persistent. What you reject within yourself does not vanish. It simply adopts new forms to appear. The more you ignore it, the stronger it grows, until the line between who you believe yourself to be and what you despise most disappears. The unacknowledged shadow takes control of your life, steering without your consent. It sabotages relationships, derails dreams, weakens strengths, and obstructs every step towards something greater. And blinded by pride, you continue blaming the world, unaware that the true adversary has always been within. But there's a way forward. There's a path where this force stops destroying you and begins empowering you. A path to turn poison into medicine, hatred into self-knowledge, and shame into personal power. This journey starts with a conscious decision to integrate the shadow, bringing it into the light of awareness. In the next section, we will explore this process of transformation. You will learn how to begin the path of shadow integration and what is required to reclaim control of your mind and your life. If this resonates, my ebook Beyond the Shadow offers deeper insights into Jung's core ideas and practical tools for understanding yourself. The link is in the pinned comment. Remember, integrating the shadow is not a simple task. It demands commitment and courage. Integrating the shadow is neither a symbolic gesture nor a superficial mental choice. It is a difficult, often painful, and profoundly transformative process. It requires consciously entering the forbidden territory of your own soul and confronting everything you have spent your life avoiding. The first step is honest recognition. You must admit that darkness exists within you, without excuses, rationalizations, or attempts to soften the truth. There is anger, envy, impulses to dominate, a desire for revenge, fear of failure, vanity, pride, and alongside these, repressed talent, forgotten courage, and dormant potential. Denying any of these aspects only strengthens the shadow's control. The second step is conscious observation. The shadow often reveals itself in your most intense and disproportionate reactions, feeling hatred for someone without clear reason, exploding in anger over minor issues, or experiencing shame for a legitimate part of yourself. These moments are the shadow whispering. Learn to observe without judgment or self-justification. Simply acknowledge and take note. The third step is compassionate acceptance. Shadow integration does not mean surrendering to it or excusing harmful behavior. It means recognizing that you are a complete human being, composed of both light and dark, strength and weakness. True emotional maturity is impossible without this acceptance. Without it, you remain trapped in a fruitless internal struggle, attempting to excise vital parts of yourself to fit an unrealistic image of perfection. Yet, integrating the shadow alone is not always sufficient. Often, guidance is needed through dream analysis, deep self-reflection, consistent self-observation, and especially working with therapists trained in Jungian analytical psychology. These tools can be essential in navigating this transformative journey. A trained therapist can guide you through the layers of the unconscious, help you identify patterns of projection, and reveal the self-sabotaging complexes that keep you stuck. True transformation occurs when what was once a source of shame becomes a source of strength, when anger becomes assertiveness, vanity shifts into genuine self-care, and envy uncovers legitimate desires for growth. The shadow does not have to destroy you. When acknowledged and worked through, it can become a foundation of real inner freedom. But integration is an ongoing process. There is no final endpoint, no moment where you achieve complete purity or enlightenment. The human psyche is fluid, and new shadows emerge throughout life. The goal is not to eliminate darkness, but to remain conscious, vigilant, and integrated. When you begin integrating your shadow, remarkable changes occur. Emotional projection diminishes. Relationships become more authentic. You stop being a prisoner of automatic reactions and start responding to life from an internal center of strength and balance. In the next section, we will explore this visible transformation, how shadow integration not only reshapes you internally, but also reflects a more balanced, authentic, and ultimately free presence to the world. When you begin to integrate your shadow, the world around you appears different. But the truth is, it is you who has changed. What once felt unbearable in others now becomes understandable. Situations that previously triggered hatred, envy, or judgment now inspire compassion, empathy, and insight. You stop seeing enemies everywhere and start recognizing others as flawed and contradictory, just like yourself. Emotional projection loses its power because you have identified the true source of the conflict. You no longer need to discharge your frustrations on others, nor justify your own pain by attacking, judging, or rejecting the external world. Instead, you learn to hold the mirror up to yourself and ask with courage, what does this reaction reveal about me? This transformation is profound. It is not just a shift in behavior, but a reorganization of perception itself. The integrated shadow provides something ego alone cannot: Balance. A balance that is not fragile like pretense, nor tense like repression, but solid, like a rock that has weathered countless internal storms. The effects extend into everyday life. Your relationships improve because you no longer seek in others the approval you once lacked in yourself. Criticism no longer wounds you because you are no longer enslaved to the need to appear perfect. You become more authentic, no longer hiding your true self, and stronger, no longer expending energy fighting against yourself. This transformation does not go unnoticed. People around you sense the difference. Some are drawn closer, recognizing your more genuine, confident, and vibrant presence. Others may distance themselves, unable to handle someone who no longer participates in the unconscious games of projection and blame. This is a natural part of the process. Integrating the shadow also involves purifying the environment around you. Carl Jung reminded us that enlightenment is not achieved by imagining figures of light, but by bringing the darkness into consciousness. True maturity comes from this courageous confrontation with your own soul. True strength emerges when you stop running from yourself. Yet there is one final piece to consider: the challenge of walking this path alone. No matter how resilient you are, there will be moments when the weight of the shadow is too great to bear without guidance. Techniques, practices, and specific approaches can support your self-discovery and shadow integration with greater safety and effectiveness. In the next and final section, we will explore how to seek help, strengthen your internal process, and most importantly, continue evolving without ever betraying your essence. You'll spend your life hiding your flaws, trying to meet the expectations of others, and adjusting to fit molds that were never meant for you. You attempted to erase impulses, feelings, and inner truths, believing this would make you stronger, more accepted, or more correct. But all of this only nourished the shadow and strengthened what you feared most. The truth is, there can be no peace while you are at war with yourself. Integrating the shadow is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. It is about reclaiming the parts of your soul that you abandoned along the way. Not to let them control you, but to know them, understand them, and finally bring them into your conscious awareness. This is the opposite of repression. It is emotional responsibility. It is psychic maturity. It is inner freedom. You no longer need to remain trapped in destructive patterns. You no longer have to react automatically to every situation or person. You no longer need to feel at the mercy of your emotions or enslaved to toxic relationships that reinforce the illusion that the problem is always outside of you. You no longer need to feel fragmented, divided, or exhausted. There is a path, challenging, yes, but profoundly transformative, that leads to living with authenticity, balance, and, most importantly, awareness. But no one walks this path alone. If you feel ready to begin this journey more deeply, consider seeking therapeutic guidance. Analytical psychology, grounded in Jung's work, offers effective tools for this inner exploration. A skilled therapist doesn't tell you what to do. They help you listen to what you've been avoiding. And that listening can change everything. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of this video challenged you the most? What made you pause and reflect? Which aspect of your shadow did you recognize? Even if just for a moment, share it in the comments. Not just to interact, but to put into words what you may never have spoken aloud. This is a first step in bringing the unconscious into the light. Naming what was once only a feeling. If this video resonated with you, don't ignore it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This is not just content. It is a space for those willing to go beyond the surface and explore the depths of the soul. And remember to watch the next video. It is as essential as this one. Every part of this journey matters, and you are not here by chance. The shadow only controls those who fear looking within. You no longer need to live in fear.